A little under a month ago, it was announced that Victor Wembanyama would be out for the rest of the season with blood clots. Luckily, this does not appear to be a long-term concern for him, but his absence meant that the season was more or less over for the Spurs. And with De'Aaron Fox having season-ending surgery on tendon damage in his pinky, the tank is now officially on. With that being the case, the Spurs will have a very real chance at getting one of the top picks in this year's draft. And the last time the Spurs had a dominant big man get injured and miss a majority of the season, followed by a tank, well, it worked out pretty damn well for the Spurs. So let's talk about whether or not we have a future dynasty on our hands. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you would like to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. We have been rolling over here at Rusty Buckets Co., having a very good time getting content out there more frequently. We have the Little Rusty Buckets channel where there's just been smaller topic stuff over there if you have not seen that already. But if you are new here, we just hit 130k subscribers, trying to get that up to 150, maybe by the end of the year, but I feel like we could outdo that, but also 200 seems ambitious. So yeah, just for right now, we're trying to hit 150k subs. I would love it if you joined the family. We're not a family. I'm not doing that parasocial bullshit, but we do talk about basketball here a lot, so if you like that, you might want to join. With that said, I don't even really know why I was super compelled to make this video. I guess it was more of just a stress stream, I guess. I just kind of had a vision of Cooper Flagg wearing a San Antonio Spurs jersey, and man, what a nightmarish circumstance that might be for the rest of the NBA. Obviously, Cooper Flagg is the guy in the thumbnail. That's the idea that is most daunting, because Cooper Flagg, and I will say this because we're going to be talking about some draft prospects in this video. I'm not a draft guy. I know a vague amount of information about all of the top picks, but Cooper Flagg has been a guy that I've seen arguments as to whether or not he should be defined as a generational talent, like he kind of teeters that line. But regardless, we're talking about a guy who has at the very least borderline superstar potential, is projected to be a perennial all-star, a very good two-way player like Andre Karolinko on defense, and then I don't even know who on offense, but definitely not Andre Karolinko, because bro's averaging 20 plus points per game in college. Really great all-around player, 6'9", can play both forward spots. And the prospect of having a guy like him playing out there with Victor Wembanyama, especially on the defensive end, like having that level of competency. You have Stephon Castle as a two guard who's a ridiculously good defender, so you have a guard defender on that level, then you have a wing defender on that level with Flagg, and of course Victor Wembanyama. Defensively, that could all be scary. But even if it's not just Cooper Flagg, even if it's one of these top four guys, we're talking about guys who pretty much have all-star potential, at least based on what I've been hearing. These guys being Dylan Harper, VJ Edgecombe, and Ace Bailey. They're all projected to be in that star tier, or at least having the upside for it. And if they manage to get a star wing or even some other guard, although I would definitely prefer a wing. Is it Ace Bailey? Yes, Ace Bailey is the other guy who I would be looking at, because it would be preferable to getting guards with you already having De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle. Not that you should pass up on an Edgecombe or an Ace Bailey if given the prospect of landing him. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they end up getting Cooper Flagg. That's what's the most interesting scenario here to me. What does that end up looking like for them? So I obviously said what it looks like on the defensive end, and I think we can all agree there's not much argument to be had there. Whether Flagg plays the 3 or the 4, he has the versatility to do it, even if his jump shot, which has not been, from my understanding, like lights out or something to be super confident, is going to be great at the NBA level. You know, he's going to have enough of a shot there, and then Wemby is obviously going to be a high volume three-point shooter and floor spacer, so you're going to have plenty of room on offense to operate with. Cooper is also a really great playmaker. Victor Wembanyama is a really good playmaker. De'Aaron Fox is a good playmaker. So between the three of them, you have guys who are all going to make the right pass pretty much all the time. It's also going to be harder to double any of these guys individually if you have to deal with that. Think of the fact that, like, Cooper Flagg would probably be getting the third best defensive matchup on the floor. That's not necessarily strictly true because it can be dependent on positions. Like maybe their third best defender is a guard and their second best defender is a wing, so Cooper ends up actually getting the second best defender. But one way or the other, there will be instances where the third best defender is on a very, very good scoring option. I don't know how high volume of a scorer Cooper Flagg is going to end up being in the NBA. I especially wouldn't know if he ended up being a third option in this instance, but I think he would be an incredibly efficient third option if given the opportunity. On the defensive end, the amount of shot blocking and steals, like the Spurs would be towards the top of the league, if not number one in the league in block shots per game. Because right now, Cooper Flagg is averaging 1.5 blocks per game in college. He's a really, really good shot blocking wing. And if you know me, you know that I love me a shot blocking wing. I mentioned Andre Karolinko earlier. It's been a big reason why I've enjoyed Manas Buzelis in Chicago this year. I love a shot blocking wing. So the prospect of that defensively, it would just probably be all-time great levels of good at its absolute peak. But what about the supporting cast beyond those three? Well, Stephon Castle, as I mentioned, has been excellent. I think he is simultaneously a really good floor guy and a really good ceiling guy, because I do think he's displayed a capability of shot making, certainly a confidence in that realm, and a good amount of ability as a slasher as well. So I do feel like he's got plenty going for him offensively, and then we already know that the defense is going to be locked down. His efficiency as a shooter has not been amazing, which is to be expected for a rookie guard, but he's had enough good games on offense and then plenty of strong displays on the defensive end of the floor that I'm confident he's going to be a starting level player in the NBA. Which guard position he ends up being more suited for, I kind of am leaning to guard, which is obviously perfect if he's going to be playing alongside De'Aaron Fox. So I really like him. I'm a really big fan of Stephon Castle, truly. Also a good decision maker and playmaker, even if he's not some elite one by any means. Speaking of, Jeremy Sochan is someone who, you know, we've had our differences in opinion over on this channel about how good Jeremy Sochan is. I find him, it's kind of weird how contentious of a player he ends up being, given that he's not like so good that you would think it would justify this level of stanhood. But I kind of feel like we're at that place in the modern NBA where you do have players getting stanned despite not even being that great to the degree that Jeremy Sochan has been. And I've been someone who has definitely been critical of him in the past. Just basically, I don't really feel like if you're a wing and you aren't like super dominant as a driver or a paint finisher or a post-up guy, if you can't shoot the three ball, then you're probably going to lose a lot of value. Like a forward who's managed to survive in the NBA this, in the last couple of years, despite not being a very strong three-point shooter, though he has shot the three well this year, is Aaron Gordon, who might not be able to shoot the three all that well, but he can kill a mismatch. If you put a small forward on him, he will bully them in the post. Offensive rebounds, well-timed cuts for lobs and things like that. Like, there are multiple different counters, but my thing with Sochan was he doesn't have a lot of counters to the fact that his jump shot is busted as fuck. He kind of has a mid-range jumper that sometimes looks okay. I think he takes it a little bit too often, but he's not like he's inept. And then the thing is, like I said, if you can get to the rim a lot, if you're a good finisher, if you play some bully ball more often, that can be a way that you work your way towards being good enough on offense, and then your positive defensive contributions overall result in you being a positive player. Well, Sochan, I think, has improved a lot in terms of his scoring inside the arc, in terms of cutting at the right time, attacking mismatches, all of the things I just mentioned. I think he's been much better at it, to the point where I think Sochan can be a long-term piece and a solid player for the Spurs. There, I said it. Can he still be overrated by a lot of Spurs fans? Absolutely. I see people talk about him like he's supposed to be like a top option on this team. If there is a future where Jeremy Sochan with this team at its peak is like top 3 in shot attempts per game, that's a massive mistake. That's a huge disastrous situation and just a complete misread of what the pecking order should be. I'm okay with that being what it is right now with the Spurs where they are today, but if 5 years down the line Jeremy Sochan is having games where he's regularly taking more shots than Victor, that would be fucking dumb as hell. It would be a giant waste of everyone's time. But he can be a long-term piece. He's only 21 years old. And if he can develop even just like a respectable catch and shoot corner three, it would make a world of difference. Now, Devin Vassell is someone who I had higher hopes for earlier on in his career, but I'm also pretty okay with what he might end up being anyways. Last year, he averaged like 18 points per game. He's displayed a really good three ball, a really good off the dribble mid-range game. Unfortunately, the off the dribble game does not really translate to the to the 3-point line. Rather, his off the dribble 3-point shot's not very good. But one of the best catch and shoot guys in the league, and then capable of creating a little bit of offense himself. Not much of a slasher, not going to get to the free throw line, but really, really, really good jump shooter. But this year, he's returned from injury, so that's probably hurt him a little bit. But I'm starting to feel more like he's destined to be like a sixth man type of guy for this team, rather than the third option, which is kind of what I projected originally. So, but at the same time, I think that's fine. I think if he's just a 28-minute per game spark plug, hitting a bunch of threes and stuff, going in there and just lighting them up for a few minutes, like I think that's all good for him. $27 million a year is maybe a little high for that role, but it's also not really. Like, it's a little higher than I would like, but people are making $70 million contracts, like per year contracts these days, so I think you'll manage it. Julian Champagnie is a pretty high quality 3-and-D guy who I think should stick around for a while. His percentage from three is not mind-boggling, but he passes the eye test, and he passes the seems confident and reliable test as a shooter, even if he's at like 35.6%. Not the best. High volume, though, and confident. I think he'll be fine. He shot the three well over long stretches before, and defensively he holds up pretty well, and even has a few moments attacking like inside, not just being strictly a shooter. But I like him a lot as well as someone who could potentially stick around for a while. The thing about this is their contract situations are kind of awesome, because you have another 2 years where Victor Wembanyama is going to be on his rookie deal. And on top of that, you'll have 4 for whoever you end up drafting this year, plus 3 more with Stephon Castle. So you don't have to pay anybody any kind of big money until you get to the 2026 offseason, where you will have to extend Fox, plus Jeremy Sohan if you plan to keep him around. But other than that, their salary cap is completely wide the fuck open. They do not have many obligations in the long term. They have Vassell's contract, and then 2 years down the line, you're going to have to pay Wemby. But you only have to pay Fox in the short term, maybe Sohan as well. And then you also have super tradable contracts like Harrison Barnes and Keldon Johnson, who next year are both going to be on 1-year deals for $19 million and $17 million each. And that is a very tradable amount of money. Keldon Johnson's young enough that he could be viewed as a pretty good young player to attach into a deal rather than just simply salary filler. And Harrison Barnes is a solid enough role player that if a team that's trying to be remotely competitive but also get a salary deal done, Harrison Barnes would be a attractive candidate for that. On top of the flexibility they have with their salary cap, they also have Atlanta's pick this year unprotected. Now, as it stands, the Hawks are the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference, and my guess would be they probably end up staying in the play-in, and they probably win it, so that this pick ends up being like 15th through 18th, something like that. That's still good, but it's also possible that they lose in the play-in, and then we're talking about another mid to late lottery pick, which you can use to draft yet another guy who you'll be able to keep on a rookie contract for 4 years. On top of that, they have Atlanta's 2027 first-round pick unprotected and the rights to swap picks with them in 2026. So, going into the future, as the Spurs get better and better over the next few years, they're still going to end up having pretty high draft picks more often than not. So even when they're dominant, they're still going to be getting lottery picks. The question at that point is just how dominant can they get? Well, I feel like Victor Wembanyama is going to be the best player in the NBA in 2 seasons. Like, I think by the time he's no longer on his rookie contract, that's the level he's going to be at. That's where I'm at personally anyways. I don't think it should be that hard for him either because with his three developed with a more well-rounded team that is better at finding him in his spots consistently, with a more focused play style that is strictly the most winning way possible and not necessarily the best for development, which I think a lot of how Victor played last year was developmental more than practically how they intend to approach his play style going into the future. So you're going to have the best defensive player in the NBA. If you add Cooper Flagg, you're going to have another one of the best defensive players in the NBA. Stephon Castle, one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. De'Aaron Fox, one of the best point guards in the NBA. And a third option offensively who might not be one of the best in terms of scoring the ball, but whether it's Ace Bailey or whether it's Cooper Flagg, talking about a guy who can bring more to the table than just scoring the ball. So there is so much that they can be on the defensive end. And then on the offensive end, I really see very few limitations in that realm as well. I don't know that a Spurs dynasty is around the corner or anything like that, because it feels like dynasties are just harder and harder to come by in the NBA. But if there was a situation in which that would happen, it's pretty much them and OKC where it makes the most sense. And I would argue that OKC really is the team that would get in the way of them actually being a dynasty type situation, because the OKC Thunder are in an even better position going into their future. They already have, some of the guys that we're talking about the Spurs theoretically getting. So yes, they are more well set for that. I love SGA though. But there's like no way that his peak is going to be as good as Wemby's. So they'll have the best player. Depending on how good Cooper could be, they might have the second best player. De'Aaron Fox probably won't be better than Chet. If he isn't already worse than Chet now, he won't be in a year or two. They'd have the second best player. J-Dub would, I don't know, again, it depends on Cooper or Ace Bailey, whoever that might be. All I want to get out there is the Spurs have shitload of cap space, draft capital beyond their own, plus all of their own future first-round picks. They have a handful of young players right now on the roster who are super exciting, and the duo of De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama is going to be terrifying. We got almost zero, very little crossover of them actually playing together, but we saw a lot of positive stuff right out of the gate, and man, I'm telling you, you get this team together going into a training camp, plus a top draft pick, they will be contending next year. And depending on how quickly that player that they draft develops, they might be seriously contending in the near future. Again, I don't really know what compelled me to make this video, but maybe I've seen the future. And the future features the Spurs winning even more goddamn titles. That was it. Shout out to Nick for editing this video. I'm not going to give him a major shout out because the hot takes video that I have not recorded yet is coming out before this one. But shout out to Nick for being back. It's good to have him back. That's it. See ya.